So staying with us, the Institute of African Studies is 60 years old, and in line with the celebration, a series of carefully selected activities centered around the theme, the African Genius 60 Years of African Studies, will be taking place both within the academic community and beyond to mark this year's celebration. Guess what? We're privileged to be joined now by Professor Samuel Intawusu, Director of the Institute, joining us here on The Pulse. Good afternoon to you, sir. And
Good
welcome.
Afternoon. Thank you so much.
Of course, congratulations. And the celebrations is still on, I believe.
Yes.
We should all be joining in that. But for those who do not know about, the Institute itself, let's go back 60 years back and see why, of course, this Institute was set up.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. The Institute of African Studies was established in 1961 by Ghana's first president, Dr. Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. And the establishment was actually as a result of a number of factors that seemed to be going about around that period. You remember that from the late 50s to the 60s,
Right.
it appears pretty much of Africa was on the move for decolonization, struggle for independence.
Right.
So some countries actually succeeded in doing so. But Nkrumah also realized that even though we had some kind of political independence, there was an aspect that also needed to be decolonized, and that is issues of the academy or academic work. So this institute was established around that time to be able to conduct research and also to teach about Africa. Now, you may recall, or many people may recall, that the academic decolonization at that time was very necessary because there were a lot of scholars, especially based in the West, who had a very different view and a very different representation of Africa.
Society.
Yes, so mostly backward people and that kind of thing. So Nkrumah wanted us to research and to teach using African-centered ways. In fact, Trevor Roper, for example, in one of his public lectures had indicated that Africa doesn't even have history, and that all there is about African history is darkness, and that darkness is no subject of history. So with such a statement, definitely as a president, you need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And one way of handling it was to establish
setting up the Institute
of African
and I
Studies.
must point out that you've done a tremendous job trying to enforce that, Pan-African narrative. We see that in the likes of the, I believe, dance ensemble.
Yes,
that of course you have under your wrap. So tell us about how you're using culture and all of these literary works to try and project the African and also by extension the institution which you serve, the University of Ghana.
Yes, so following this charge, a charge that actually was contained in Nkrumah's speech, popularly called the African Genius.
Right.
What happened was that then faculty decided to approach this whole process of educating and expanding people's knowledge about our culture and identity through different units. Right. So, for example, we then had about six units. One unit dealing with the history and politics, another dealing with language, literature, and drama, another dealing with religions and philosophy, societies and cultures. So that is how we've decided to divide our roles so that each faculty, each staff within any of this unit is able to project or carry forward the African culture using this kind of unit-centered approach.
I see. Now, 60 years on, and of course, you're still celebrating that genius. You equally want to improve and produce more, market-ready students that will influence and, of course, come up with more works that will impact on society. Tell us about the activities we're likely to see now that you're moving into that phase of celebrating 60 years.
Okay, so it's going to be more or less a year-long thing, and I like the fact that you mentioned the Ghana Dance Ensemble. Right. The reason is that the Ghana Dance Ensemble is very unique. Right. Many see the dance ensemble merely maybe in terms of entertainment, but that is not what it is. The Ghana Dance Ensemble more or less spread our research work through performance. Yeah. So by doing so, they also contribute in terms of teaching and in terms of advocacy. Now, to what extent are we able to do this through our programs? We, on the 14th of this month, I think that will be on Thursday, we are going to have a kind of symposium of all past directors. We think that each director had a very unique way of trying to bring into fruition this kind of African genius. So we are going to have about 6 of them that will tell us what they have done during their tenure so far in order to be able to spread this whole idea of African identity and culture. That is on the 14th. Then on the 16th, it will be a Saturday, we are going to award our past directors, our deputy directors, and our retired faculty. We think that they've contributed so much, not only in terms of research, but also in terms of teaching and advocacy. And it is due time that we recognize the efforts that they have been able to put in. Yes.
Prof, the debate has been on, and of course, perhaps this is the time to launch into that, 60 years of African studies, and some even go to the extent of arguing that this is the very core for which the University of Ghana was established. I mean, looking at the era in which we were at the time, the president we had who was very Pan-African in nature. Do you feel that, that spirit is dying off and we don't find that necessarily reflected in our academia and even political life?
No, I think on the contrary, the Pan-African spirit is still much alive and going on. The thing is that there's a slight shift in terms of focus. At first, the Pan-African agenda was driven by politicians and by presidents. But this seemed to have shifted a little bit to the youth, to advocates, and also to the academy. Now, if you look at the Institute of African Studies, for example, around 1958, we convened the first kind of African conference, a kind of Pan-African conference, for us to interrogate issues of Africa and the diaspora and see how to move Africa forward in that direction. 2018, we repeated that. So definitely we are doing so. If you also look at the performing arts, especially music, you see that most of the musical compositions and expressions, especially reggae music and the rest, they are still at the forefront of projecting Pan-Africanism.
I see.
And also, if you look at workshops and conferences that have been organized, both within the African continent, in Ghana, and also abroad, we still are engaging this whole thing of Pan-Africanism. You will have realized now the new thing is decolonizing the academy. You've heard of that decolonization. Everybody is trying to decolonize. I think that this whole attempt at decolonization is also an aspect of Pan-Africanism. So we are still on, and we haven't stopped that
I
yet.
see. And feeding that into curriculum and, of course, our education sector, in what ways is the African Institute using, the power you have, the power of education and the academia to influence the Ghanaian society and the African continent at large?
Okay, so as I've indicated, the very reason for which we were established was just for us to research and then to be able to teach. And also,
well, just feel free about that. It's very normal technology. And of course, we'll continue the conversation shortly. But of course, it's the reason for which I'm asking where we are now and why we need, real-time, contemporary academic tuition that will also reflect Pan-Africanism in what we're seeing these days. It's the reason for which I was asking the question.
Yes. So thank you so much. I think if you come to the Institute of African Studies, for example, we have developed a lot of courses, and almost all are Pan-African centered. So we have a graduate course, for example, in Pan-Africanism. We have an undergraduate program. We don't award undergraduate degrees, but we teach level 200. So Africa and the Diaspora, for example, is a course that is very popular, and students are assigned onto it. We are also able to turn our researches into papers that we also use to. So these are the different ways by which we teach, we research, and then we expand the frontiers.
Okay, let's look at the way forward and what will be happening maybe immediately. Are we likely to have other stakeholders join you in this celebration?
Yes. So we have invited the media because we know that there's simply no way by which you can talk about the whole issue of celebrating 60 years without involving the media.
Right.
The media plays a very critical role in educating and spreading the news. So we have already sent letters to partners, and I think Joy FM will soon have.
I see. We'll be happy to be a part of that celebration.
Yes,
any message to our audience, perhaps alumni as well, people who've gone through the Institute? Any message to them?
Yes. So the message that I have for any, in fact,
yes,
when we talk of alumni, I think it is good.
There are notable ones.
No, there are notable ones, but we need to also make a very strong claim.
Right.
Once you have gone through the University of Ghana, you are an alumni of African Studies because UGIC and former AFST is compulsory. You need to pass.
You would have taken a course.
Yes, definitely. So almost everybody who has gone through UG is invited. Of course, we also would like to recognize the likes like Afarijan, a former EC.
Oh, EC.
Right. He passed through the Institute of African
That's amazing.
Studies. Professor George Hagan passed through the Institute of African Studies. Professor Kosi Adumakwampofo, and several others that I have not mentioned. My message is that they should join us for us to celebrate, and they should also join us to be able to charter a new course for African Studies for the benefit of the African continent and the diaspora.
Professor Samuel Ntebuso, it's a pleasure speaking to you, and the edge is also going out to students on campus now to join in the celebration.
Definitely.
60 years of the African Juniors and 60 years of the African Studies is what we're celebrating. Prof, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And we take you to some other stories this afternoon because the Minister for Local Government, Dan Botwe, is rallying the public to participate massively in the upcoming district level elections. Now, more than 6,000 local level leaders are expected to be elected to the various district assemblies. The district level elections over the years, as we've seen, have been plagued with the challenge of poor participation. Dan Botwe says MPs must get their constituents involved.
I entreat my honourable members of parliament in this August House to whip up enthusiasm of the electorate to turn out on Tuesday, 19 December 2023, and vote massively for the representatives to their respective district assemblies and unit committees. Right Honourable Speaker, decentralization has brought government closer to the people than it had ever been in almost 3 decades. Although there is no government policy to systematically create smaller local government jurisdictions, with the creation of 261 district assemblies from 110 in 1988, the average population per a local government jurisdiction has reduced substantially, thereby enabling local government to reach a smaller population. This has also reduced the proximity of local governments to locations where problems occur and where appropriate solutions may be found. The critical role of the media in creating awareness of this level elections cannot be overemphasized. Accurate and timely reportage by the media on key issues which will shape local governance should whip up and sustain the level of public interest in the processes leading up to the conduct of this level elections. It is therefore envisaged that the time and energy devoted for presidential and parliamentary elections by our friends in the media fraternity is replicated in the upcoming district level elections. It is even my ardent hope that more platforms are created by relevant bodies with deep involvement of the media to intensify the awareness and advocacy for higher voter turnouts